What's going on, guys? My name is Kalen Vasher. You are now tuned into another episode of the Kalen Vasher Show. Before we get started, as always, just want to give a quick shout out to everybody listening. You guys are always much appreciated. If you want to connect with me and talk about anything basketball, football, baseball, or just sports in general, my links are down below on the screen. Y'all do see my Twitter is now down there in the right corner. But yeah, if you want to connect with me and talk about anything sports in general, I'm always open to some dialogue, always open to some good conversation. So that's where you guys can reach me at, as well as my links will be down below in the description box for those of you watching on YouTube. We got a big show for you guys today. A lot's been going on, a lot of drama in the NBA yesterday. Between a little bit of Damian, a little bit of talk. The NBA Finals happened yesterday. Chris Paul got released yesterday or waived. Some Zion Williamson off the court drama happened yesterday. Just the NBA is just one big reality show that we all watch every day. And yesterday had no shortage of said drama. I also am going to be talking about a little bit of NFL football today. Something that I've been wanting to incorporate for a long time into the show. I think I have a few episodes where I talked about football a little bit back in the day, or probably about a year ago or so. But I wanted to get into it more and not have this just be a basketball show. So later on in the show, we're going to touch on some NFL news with training camp right around the corner. The draft happened last month, and August will be here before we know it. So with that, I want to start talking about more football so that the dialogue will be open whenever the NFL season actually begins in late August, early September. So really excited for today's show. But for starters, I think it's only right if we start with the NBA Finals Game 3. Y'all know that's my bread and butter. Didn't talk too much about Game 2 just because Game 2 kind of happened like I said it would. Miami came out with the dub. But Game 3 is where I really felt like it was going to be a turning point for this series for whatever team, whether it was Denver, who ultimately came out with the victory, or if Miami would have found a way to pull it out last night. I feel like that would have been a big turning point for them. Would have done a lot for their morale going into Game 4. That'll be on Friday, a.k.a. tomorrow night. But the NBA Finals have been nothing short of exciting, for me at least. Great players, role players stepping up in a big way. We saw Christian Braun have 15 points last night. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray both dropping triple doubles, respectively, for both of them. So they played fantastic. But the one thing that I did want to talk about today, whenever we were talking about the NBA Finals, is just the fact that I don't believe the Miami Heat can truly win a title with Jimmy Butler. And that's not a knock on Jimmy Butler. I think Jimmy Butler is one of the top 10, 12 basketball players in the world right now. His intensity is off the charts. He brings it every night. He's going to come with the energy every single night. But just from a talent perspective, just from a skill set perspective, I don't know if he can be the best player on the championship team. Bam played really well last night, as he has the entire series. But again, with Jimmy being your number one and late in crunch time, you're looking to him and you're looking to Bam. I just don't know if Miami has enough, which is something that I always said from the beginning, even previewing going into Game 1 for the Finals. Jimmy Butler, to me, doesn't have enough of an offensive game. You can see him get the numbers. He might have some 50-point games here, some 30-point games here and there. But there's a lot more times than not that we see Jimmy just kind of have solid numbers. He'll have 23, 7 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, and that's kind of it. He'll play some solid defense. And I don't think that that's what's going to win you an NBA championship, because when you look at it on the flip side for like the Denver Nuggets, every night we're either getting a monster game from Nikola Jokic or it's a monster game from Jamal Murray. And even if it's not those two, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is going to step up. Like we saw last night, Christian Braun stepped up. And I think that you just need a certified 100% superstar that can get a bucket at any time that they want, that can turn into that quote-unquote killer mentality mode that they want at any time. And I don't know if Jimmy Butler has that. Again, not trying to knock and rag on him, but that's just the truth of the matter of how I feel. So now that they are down 2-1, Game 4 tomorrow night will be a big game for the Miami Heat. I did have them winning Game 3 just because it was the first game that they were going to have at home in the NBA Finals. I thought that the energy in the building, the players would play a little bit better, and I thought that they would ultimately pull out the victory last night. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The Nuggets walked away with a 15-point victory, already touched on the triple-double for both Jokic and Murray. But I think Friday's game is of course the big one for everybody because you either go back to Denver down 3-1 or you go back tied 2-2, and then it just becomes the first one to win 2 more games. You're going to get another home game after that. It's not guaranteed that you get one if you go down 3-1. So I think game 4 is the biggest game of this series. What will we get from Jimmy Butler and company? And I'm not even too much worried about Jimmy Butler because, like I said, you're kind of going to get what you're going to get every single game from Jimmy. Again, there's the few anomaly games where he goes off and he has 40 or he has 50, but mainly you know what you're going to get from Jimmy Butler. My big question mark for me is Gabe Vincent. What are we going to get from Caleb Martin? What are we going to get from Kyle Lowry? Even guys like Kevin Love, who I'm not expecting Kevin Love to go out there and drop 25, but, you know, knocking down some timely shots, being able to rebound. I know his defense on Nikola Jokic, like a lot of bigs in the NBA lately, has not been effective. So they probably need to switch up some more looks. And then you cannot let Nikola Jokic get off like he did last night. Again, he had 34 last night or 32, and that just can't happen. You have to turn him into a scorer, make him beat you scoring the ball, and let everything else just kind of happen. But when he has nights like he did last night at 32 and 21, plus 10 assists to go along with the 10, 11 assists, you're going to lose every single time. A lot of coaches have touched on it. More specifically, Steve Kerr touched on it and talked about how they game plan for Nikola Jokic for their playoff series a few years ago. But for the most part, I feel like the best way to make him take him out of the game, I should say, is to make him a 100% scorer. You have to make the others around him make plays. If you're going to lose this series with Nikola Jokic scoring 30 and 40 every game, that's fine. Like, I feel like that's something you have to live with. But when you have Jamal Murray going for 33, when you have Christian Braun coming off the bench and giving you 15, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope didn't necessarily have the biggest game last night, but, you know, he's more than capable of giving you 12 or 15 points. We saw Aaron Gordon had a good game a few games ago. Michael Porter Jr. struggled last night, but he's knocked down some timely shots in a few of the games in this series. So I feel like you have to take away the others. You have to make this a Nikola Jokic, you have to beat me scoring the ball game. And until the Miami Heat can do that, I don't think that they're going to have a chance in this series. It's just not going to happen. I don't see it happening, and they need to do a better job of containing the others. Usually for a lot of teams, like I know when I was talking about teams like the Lakers and the Clippers, it was more about containing the stars and letting the others beat you. Now I feel like just because of what Jokic brings to you as a facilitator and what he brings to you on the glass, you have to take both of those two aspects out of his game. When y'all are boarding, when y'all are going for rebounds, you have to completely move Nikola Jokic out the way. And I'm sure it's easier said than done for me sitting in the comfort of my own home than actually having to go guard him because he is one of the strongest players in the NBA. He is hard to move off the block whenever he gets the ball in the low spot. And even when he's in the mid-post area, he's very effective. So, again, I know it's easier said than done, but until they make a change and until they actually put the focus on that, send some fresher bodies at him, and literally you have to rough him up almost. I don't want to say get crazy, and I know the NBA has changed and you can't really touch anybody and do anything crazy anymore, but when you're playing for an NBA championship and now your backs are truly against the wall going into game 4, you have to throw out all the stops. You have to hunker down and give it all that you can. And if the Miami Heat don't do that, and even if Nikola Jokic doesn't necessarily have a 35 and 20 game again, if Nikola Jokic even has a 25 and 17, 18, closer to 20 boards again game, it's going to be very hard for the Miami Heat to beat them. So I feel like that's the biggest thing is just containing Jokic, which everybody has been saying. I've said it more than once. I said it in the Western Conference Finals. It was true for whoever played them in the first round. You have to take Jokic out the game as a facilitator and a rebounder and just make him beat you scoring the ball. And he's such a great player, and he's such a talented offensive player that he's more than capable of doing so and more capable than beating you with points and beating you as a scorer. But I feel like that's the most effective way to try and take him out of the game is to make him a full-time scorer. So interested to see what happens with game 4. If I had to give an early prediction, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the Nuggets pulled this one out as well. They steal both games and head back to Denver up 3-1. Just because I feel like last night was a game that Miami not only really needed, but they wanted. Like when you come home in the NBA Finals and it's your first game on the road, especially after quote unquote stealing the momentum in game 2 and coming out with a win and being able to take that momentum back to your home floor. Um, you want to build off that. You want to keep that momentum going, and you want to be able to take that into game 3. And so they were in the game early. Bam Adebayo stepped up like again he has all series long, but until they take Nikola Jokic out of his facilitating point guard and rebounding phase, then it's just going to be a tough series every single game out for the Miami Heat. So interested to see what happens going into game 4. So I also wanted to touch on Damian Lillard a little bit coming into today's show. Damian Lillard has made it known that he wants to contend for championships as he should, being one of the best players in the NBA. You don't want to just keep putting up empty stats every single year in, year out. Portland does currently hold the number 3 pick in the NBA draft. There's been a lot of talks about what the Portland Trailblazers will do with that pick. Will they trade it? Or if they decide to stick there at 3, what do they do with it? Or if they traded, who are some players that they're looking to go after? Who are some players that they're looking to package together? Because even if you wanted to bring in another star player, you would have to let go of some of your young assets. You would have to let go of somebody like Anthony Simons or even Shadon Sharp, who they already said they're not going to trade. But I feel like for any team, the right price speaks. So we just have to see what happens with that. But CJ McCollum was on First Take yesterday, and he was talking about Dame's future in Portland and whether or not he sees it being over or not. And he said that he thinks Dame's time in Portland is up. We saw the last of Dame in Portland this season, and I can't say that I disagree with him. Just for the simple fact that Damian Lillard, again, has made it known that he wants to play for a contender. He wants to contend for NBA championships. And like he was saying yesterday, CJ McCollum, he made a really good point. He's not even necessarily saying that he wants to join a super team and walk in being the number 1 seed in the playoffs in whatever conference he's in, but he at least wants to have a puncher's chance. And he hasn't had a puncher's chance in years. When they made it to the Western Conference Finals, that was a year that they had a puncher's chance. We all knew that they didn't have enough to contend with the Warriors, but you can at least say that they had a chance to win the series, or they were there and they played good enough and they played well enough to at least get to the Western Conference Finals. But since that, now that CJ is gone, they haven't really done anything. They haven't really been able to contend. They've been at the bottom of the Western Conference standings for the past few years, fighting for play-in spots just to even get into the playoffs. And so I think Dame's over that at this point in his career. He's 32 this year, going to be turning 33 soon. And he doesn't have any more time to waste because at the end of the day, in the NBA, this is all about making money and winning NBA championships. And I think Dame has already made his money, or in his mind, he's made enough to say that I'm comfortable enough where I'm at financially. Now I'm more so worried about what is my legacy going to look like when it comes to championships. And I get it. Dame wants to stay loyal to the grind. He wants to stay loyal to Portland. They probably have some of the best fans in the NBA, and their loyalty to them. They show up every single night. They're going to be loud every single night. But I feel like it's just come to a crossroads. Damian Lillard's time in Portland is up, and I don't think that there's anything anybody can do about that. Some possible teams that I can see Damian Lillard looking to go to this year, like everybody else has been saying, my 2 top are Brooklyn and Miami. Most notably Brooklyn, just because I feel like Brooklyn will have some assets that they can look to package in a deal to get Damian Lillard or trade for, or whatever the case may be. They have Mikal Bridges, who came in and played really well, being the number 1 option in Brooklyn after the trade from Phoenix. So I feel like him, Dame, and you might be able to get one more guy to fit in that rotation, depending on where it comes from. We could see a guy like D'Angelo Russell maybe making his way back to Portland. Brooklyn. I really like Nick Claxton and what he's doing as their center. So I'm really excited to see what Brooklyn does this offseason. I think that they're one of the more exciting teams in the NBA. They're young, but they're still competitive. Even though they didn't really weren't that competitive in the NBA playoffs this year, but I really think that they're a team that'll get better year after year. And I think that's what Dame may be looking for. He looks for a team that he can go in somewhere and contend for a championship. So pairing him with Mikal Bridges and Nick Claxton, I think may be a good look for him, and that may be somewhere he's looking to go. And if he goes to Miami, I know you said yesterday, if Miami wins the NBA championship, that's not a place that he's looking to go. And I don't blame him, again, just because I don't know how the dynamic would look with Jimmy Butler and Damian Lillard being on the same team. And then you have a lot of older vets and the undrafted guys. They have a lot of grit in Miami, but I don't know if Dame would be the right fit for them there. Speaking of point guards, I think it's time that we talk about the point guard, or that he's been nicknamed, and that's Chris Paul has been waived by the Phoenix Suns as of yesterday. And now the question becomes, what does his future look like? Where is he going? What will his contract situation look like wherever he goes? A lot of question marks when it comes to CP3's career. He's going to be 38, or he is 38, one of the older players in the league. And I know at this point in his career, he wants an NBA championship. He's let that be known. He had a really good chance to win one with Phoenix. Of course, we've seen how that went, and they weren't able to pull that out. But I think for CP3, his biggest thing is just championship contention. Where that might be, or where some of the places that I could see him going. Of course, the Lakers are always going to be in the mix for me just because of that relationship that he has with LeBron James. Being in LA, I'm pretty sure that's where a lot of his family is. So he wouldn't want to leave LA. He would be closer to home, being able to play with one of his best friends in the NBA, as well as one of the best bigs in the NBA is Anthony Davis, but I don't know how the contract situation matches up for him to be in LA. Or I could also see him going back to the Clippers in LA. You would pair him with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. Terrence Mann will probably be your shooting guard or your backup. Eric Gordon, who he played with in Houston. So the Clippers are also a sleeper pick that I feel like he could be looking for. Again, we have to see what contracts line up with. And that's the biggest thing with me when it comes to talking about Chris Paul. Would he be willing to take a pay cut to contend for a championship, to be able to build a better roster around him? And what else does that look like? I could also see him going back to Phoenix. You've been building something in Phoenix. Of course, they're kind of clearing house, or that's how it looks right now after letting go of Monty Williams. Another player that I could see being on the move from Phoenix this year, of course, is DeAndre Ayton. Just for me, just since that whole run that happened a few years ago, we haven't seen the same DeAndre Ayton. To me, it doesn't look like he wants to be there as bad. I know there was a clip when they were playing the Denver Nuggets of him just watching Nikola Jokic get a rebound. And for me, I just don't feel like that's something that a player who actually wants to be there, actually wants to contribute to an NBA championship for the city he's playing in would do. So I feel like he could be on the move this year. They could probably try and get some picks for DeAndre Ayton. Probably would be a draft night move if he was to get moved this offseason. But yeah, when you get a guy like KD, you have Devin Booker that's still there, then the question just becomes, how are we going to build around them? They are obviously our best two players. They're obviously our best two pieces, and the ones that are going to win us a championship if we're there. And so now I think when you have a guy like Chris Paul, you don't necessarily have to pay Chris Paul as much as you were paying him. He's not as valuable as you may think he is, because the Suns could realistically go somewhere else and get a veteran point guard. You could possibly bring a guy like D'Angelo Russell in, even though he's not much of a facilitator as Chris Paul would be. You can go and look that way. You can go and look at some of the older point guards. I'm not sure if Rondo is still playing around, but Rondo would be a good fit in Phoenix. So it all just comes down to that and how his contract is going to look. I think that's what plays the biggest role in seeing where CP3 goes this year. But for me, I feel like wherever he goes, he instantly makes them a top 3 to 4 team in the Western Conference. We see what he did with that OKC team a few years ago when he took them to the playoffs after a lot of people didn't even think that they were going to be a good team. They were probably going to be a number 1 pick contention that year. So for me, I feel like any team would be proud to have CP3. I know there's a lot of jokes going around with him not having the ring, but for me, I really believe in CP3. I think he's still one of the best point guards in NBA history. If I had to rank him, he's probably right behind John Stockton. And so what does that put him at, like 4? If we're talking about Magic and Isaiah going 1 and 2, or whatever you're putting Steph at, if we're calling Steph a point guard. So um, I feel like any team would be happy to have CP3. Any team would be lucky to have CP3. But again, it all comes down to how his contract lines up. Just the way that he sees the game, just the way that he plays the game. He's an underrated defender, even being 38 years old, on-court coach, not afraid to get on his teammates when they're not doing something right. And so I feel like he not only would be good on the court, but he would be good in the locker room for whoever brings him in to their franchise. And lastly, in the talks of the NBA, I don't want to spend too much time on it. I really don't. But me being a journalist or aspiring journalist, I feel like it's my job. I feel like it's my responsibility to give my take on what's going on with Zion Williamson. I know that's personal. I know that's off the court stuff, but it's basketball news. Zion Williamson is an NBA player. He's one of the best NBA players in the league whenever he's actually on the court and playing. But Zion, gang, what you doing? What's really going on right now? I seen a tweet. Somebody said it the other day. The 2019 NBA draft class tripping, especially them top 2 picks with Ja and Zion going 1 and 2. Again, I don't really even have too much craziness to say, but what I will say is, on a more serious note, is a lot of these young guys coming into the NBA, I feel like just in the era that we're living in, the social media era, and it being so easy to reach out to these players and really say anything to these players, us as fans, and we see it from Zion with women. You just have to be smarter. I'm not going to make a joke. I'm not going to say anything crazy, but you just have to be smarter. And that not only goes for him, but that goes for Ja Morant as well, as I touched on a few weeks ago whenever his whole gun situation had happened. When you're young and you're successful, there's going to be a lot of people checking for you, not just women, but your friends, your family. Like, it's a lot to put on the shoulders of a 22, 23-year-old. But at the same time, you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your brand. We see it with guys like LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. They just stay out the way when it comes to off the court stuff. Now, they may speak up and say something political, or it may make the news, but it's nothing crazy to where it's going to tarnish their actual personal brand. And whether that be just the way that the social media era is now making some of these players that are coming into the league, because we see it with LaMelo. Even people have talks about LaMelo and his relationship off the court. I think that once you hit a certain level of stardom, and once you hit a certain level of followers on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever the case may be, you really have to lock in, almost to say you have to be in a straight and narrow. And when you're not living correctly off the court and you're not involved with quote unquote the right people, when money gets involved and kids gets involved in different things, and jealousy and pride start taking over, then that's where we see a situation like we saw from Zion Williamson yesterday. So really, this isn't even a message more so to Zion, because I'm sure that his camp and everything is going to figure everything out, and he's going to be good. Zion is going to be fine. This is just a bump in the road. It's a major bump in the road, and it's a huge social media topic and distraction right now. But for me, this is more so a conversation piece and a message to the younger guys in the NBA, coming up in the NBA, the high school guys with a real chance to make it to the NBA, the college guys with a real chance to make it to the NBA. Protect your brand. They always talk about the digital footprint, and that goes for even us regular schmoes like me. The digital footprint is real. Anything that you say, to anybody, anything that you put out online can always be traced back to you. So I just want to say for you young guys and girls, be smarter with the decisions you're making. Be smarter with the relationship choices you're making. Be smarter with what you're posting online. Be smarter with who you're hanging around, because we're just in a day and age where everything is broadcasted. Everything is put online for everybody to see. So if you don't want something to come out, or you would rather not have something be public to the media, especially when you're a high status individual, don't do said thing, or don't make said choices. That's all I wanted to say with Zion. Again, I know his camp and everything is going to figure out whatever they have going on, so I'm not too worried about him. But I pray everything gets sorted out on that end, and we can just get back to playing basketball. Zion doesn't bother anybody. Zion is happy. He always has a smile on his face, as well as providing us with crazy highlights on the court. So again, hopefully this is just a minor bump in the road, and before we know it, it'll all blow over and he can just get back to hoop. And to close out the show today, I did want to touch on a little bit of NFL football. Again, the NFL season will be here before we know it. Training camp will be starting up here pretty soon, as well as the Hall of Fame game, preseason, and then we're right back into the thick of it. I am a fantasy football player, so ready to get back on the grind with that. But what I mainly wanted to touch on today in the NFL is my top 3 sleeper teams to watch for this year. Of course, everybody's going to be talking about the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles. The Jets are going to be another team. People are talking about the Bengals. I think even the Jaguars have a really good shot this year. Will they be able to beat some of these other AFC teams? I don't think so, but I think they'll be one of the better teams in the AFC. But for me, that there's 3 teams that I feel like people aren't paying enough attention to. One of them being a biased pick. Y'all know me, a Bears fan, so I'm going to get to them last. But the main 2 that I wanted to talk about right now were going to be the Colts and the Cowboys. Sticking first with the Indianapolis Colts. I really like the Indianapolis Colts. I have for years. I think I have a TikTok out where I was talking about if the Colts were to make the playoffs, they would be a sleeper to make the Super Bowl a few years ago. I've always liked the Colts. I really like just the personnel that they have over there. I mean, when you look at the guys that they have, I think this is going to be a huge bounce back here from Jonathan Taylor. I think Anthony Richardson has a chance to come in and play really well. He's young, didn't play a lot at Florida, so it's still 50-50 on what you're going to get from him as an NFL quarterback. But I just think with all the physical traits he has, his size, his strength, the ability with him not only being a passer but a runner, you're going to get different looks from him, read options and different things like that. So I think that'll be interesting to watch what they do from a quarterback standpoint. On defense, you got guys like Kenny Moore and DeForest Buckner. And then I really like Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce. I think that they are really 2 good wide receivers. They give DBs problems with their size. Alec Pierce played really well last year. Michael Pittman Jr. has played well his first 3-4 years in the league. So really, really excited to see what the Colts do this year. I think that they can surprise some guys. I think that them and the Jaguars will be the top 2 teams competing in the AFC South. The Texans and the Titans, of course, especially the Titans, don't know what they're going to be doing this year. But the Texans with C.J. Stroud, they did get better, but I think that they're still maybe a year or 2 away from competing for the AFC South. So this year for me is definitely Jacksonville and Indianapolis to see what they do. But mainly it all comes down to Jonathan Taylor. A few years ago, 2 years ago actually, he tore up the scene, running crazy, was putting up crazy numbers in fantasy. I know that's where it was really sticking out to me that he was going off. So I think that he has a bounce back here. Last year he dealt with a lot of injuries. He dealt with a lot of things that was messing with him all year long. So hopefully he's able to turn that around, come back healthy this year, and be able to return back to his MVP caliber form that he was at 2 seasons ago. Also, got to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. It wouldn't be NFL football if I didn't talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Me being from Dallas, I hear about the Cowboys all the time. Half of my family is Cowboys fans. I'm tired of hearing about the Cowboys. But again, you have to talk about them. They're America's team. Like them or not, we got to talk about the Cowboys. And I know they say it every year. I know every year is Super Bowl this, Super Bowl that. Cowboys gonna finally win a Super Bowl, and I don't want to say I'm going that far, but I really, really like the Dallas Cowboys this year. I can't even front. I know my dad's gonna get a kick out of me saying that, but I really like the Cowboys this year, man. Dak Prescott is going to be the engine on whether they go or whether they lose. If he can control the ball, the Dallas Cowboys have a real legitimate shot to not only make a deep playoff run, but actually contend for a Super Bowl this year. Because just when you look at the personnel that they have, you got Dak, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb. They added guys like Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. You'll get a full season of an actual healthy Michael Gallup. Michael Parsons, I feel like could be a sleeper pick for MVP this year now that he's moving full-time to DN or looking to move full-time to DN. That opens up guys for like DeMario Overshawn from Texas, who's going to be a rookie this year, to get some snaps at linebacker and maybe get some early PT. I think that they're one of the more exciting teams in the NFL. They're going to be able to score points like they do every year. And then there's still a possibility that they can bring Ezekiel Elliott back. They have, as they've had for the past few years, one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But it all just comes down to, can Dak Prescott take care of the football? That's point blank period what this is going to come down to. If Dak can take care of the football, they actually have a chance to win. If he can't, it'll be a repeat of every single season that we've seen from here on out. And then the question becomes, if he can't take care of the football, do you look to move on from Dak Prescott after this year? As much good as he's done just as much bad. He's turnover prone. Injuries have shown up for the past 2 years, whether it be the broken foot from a few years ago or the hand injury that he had early in the year last year against Tampa Bay. So really, I feel like this is a big year for not only the Cowboys, but Dak Prescott as a whole, because if you don't show them that you're 100% unequivocally the guy in Dallas, I don't think Jerry Jones will hesitate to move on, especially with the quarterback class that we're going to see this year. I can see the Cowboys maybe trying to make a move. Of course, whoever gets the number one pick might be looking to take Caleb Williams. Drake May is going to be in there this year. I think Spencer Rattler will be a sleeper pick for one of the first QBs off the board in the NFL this year, now that he's at South Carolina. I think that this is the year for Dak, and whether we see his progression and if he stays and is going to be a Dallas Cowboy his whole career, or if they decide to move on from him. And then lastly, I feel like this is the perfect way to close out the show, because we get to talk about my team. We get to talk about the Chicago Bears. I think they're the most slept-on team in the NFL. I said it, and I mean every single word of that sentence. The Chicago Bears will win the NFC North this year. Okay, I don't know about that. But the Chicago Bears will shock a lot of people this year. I know the cool thing, the funny thing is to joke on the Bears, talk about how bad of a team they are, blah, blah, blah. Justin Fields is a running back, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all. But I feel like y'all low-key really scared of the Bears. Y'all low-key scared of us. That's just my opinion. The Bears, y'all are scared of Justin Fields. Y'all are scared because y'all know Justin Fields can really throw the ball. When Justin Fields was coming out of college, and I hate to keep talking about Justin Fields in college, but that's the only thing we have to go out of or off of, because that's the last time that he actually had a reliable O-line. That was the last time that we could see Justin Fields being a actual quarterback, stand in the pocket, look through his progressions, and make reads. We haven't been able to see that from him in the NFL yet. Now, I'm not even saying that that'll be the case this year, but the Bears did beef up their own line. They did bring some guys in. They drafted Darnell Wright, and they have a better O-line. Do they have the best O-line in the NFL? Do they have a top 10 in the offensive line in the NFL? No. But they did get a lot better. So I feel like the excuse for the offensive line is gone this year. I feel like that's not a problem anymore. They got better in the wide receiver core. You bring in DJ Moore. Chase Claypool came over late in the season last year. Darnell Mooney's still there. Velus Jones, if he can just stop turning the ball over, he will be a good wide receiver. He's quick, he's fast, he's shifty. He gave us a lot of highlights last year. He just couldn't take care of the ball. So if he gets his ball control and ball security under control, he's a solid option as a wide receiver. Then You have guys like Roschon Johnson, who I think will, by the end of the season, have a chance to really be the number one running back in Chicago because it's going to be running back by committee this year. You let David Montgomery go to the Lions, and so now it's Khalil Herbert. You bring in Deonta Foreman, and now you have Roschon Johnson. So it's going to be running back by committee. But my thing is, people sleep on Roschon Johnson a lot because he played behind Bijan Robinson. When you have a generational running back prospect like Bijan Robinson was at Texas, of course Roschon Johnson has to take a back seat to him. That's just the way life works. And so he wasn't necessarily able to flash everything he had. When Roschon Johnson touched the ball at Texas, he was electric too. I know that they used him on kickoff returns. Of course, he was used in the backfield as well whenever Bijan needed a breather. But I feel like he's going to be a sleeper for the Bears. Then you brought in TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. Two really, really solid linebackers, especially Edmonds. I know there was a video that came out a few weeks ago, but he looked like he slimmed down a little bit, got a pick, took it back to the crib, and was moving on the field. And Jack Sanborn, who also played really well for the Bears last year, is still there as a linebacker. And so I just want to re-preference. I'm not saying the Bears are going to be a Super Bowl contending team this year, but they have a real shot to win the NFC North. Now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, I don't believe in Jared Goff like that. I don't necessarily believe in their offense and what they're doing, even though I really do like Dan Campbell and what he's building over in Detroit, and I like who he is as a head coach. I just have never been able to believe in the Lions. They haven't given me a reason to do so. So until they do so, I won't. But when you look at the rest of the division, what are you going to get from Kirk Cousins? He's the definition of mid in the NFC North. The Packers no longer have a QB. Jared Goff is supposed to lead the Lions to the promised land and lead them to an NFC North title. And I'm not saying it's not possible because Jared Goff played really well last year, but if he was playing that well, he would have never got shipped to Detroit in the first place. And so it's just like, I don't know if the Lions have enough, especially now that Jameson Williams is now going to miss a few games due to his suspension. What does their offense really look like? Amon-Ra St. Brown has to now take the reins as being a true number one in their offense. I know last year he had a really good year, but what's it going to be like this year now that teams are coming in actually game planning for Jameson Williams? What's it going to look like when they know Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. What's it going to look like when we know that that's the one guy that they're going to be looking to as their first option every single play? And they have other receivers, and whenever Jameson Williams comes back, he's going to be electric as well, and that's going to open things up. But until then, what's it really going to look like? How is he going to fare as a true number one? How is Jared Goff going to fare coming off of a pretty successful year? He now has to back that up again. And they did get better running back-wise. I feel like adding David Montgomery and drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, I just can't put faith in the Lions to just run away with the division like a lot of people think that they do. And even though the Vikings still have Justin Jefferson, who is, to me, the best wide receiver in football right now, they released Dalvin Cook this morning. So now what are you doing with the running back situation? And so I feel like the NFC North, mainly for the Vikings and the Packers, there's a lot of question marks. The Lions are probably the most put together team, but the Bears on paper, to me, in my opinion, since they're so far under the radar and people aren't expecting anything out of them, they could shock a lot of people. That's all I'm saying. Could they win the North? Yes. Do I believe they're going to win the North? Yes. Will they actually win the North? I don't know. But with the pieces they brought in, they struggled last year, so the only place you really have to go is up. You look at the Bears' schedule last year, they lost a lot of games by one possession. You lose a heartbreaker to the Vikings by one possession on a fumble. You lose to the Eagles by one possession. You lose to the Dolphins by one possession. Like, it was a lot of games that the Bears were in, and these are quality teams, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Eagles, teams that made playoff runs. And they just couldn't put it together, whether that be turnovers or penalties or whatever the case may be. They were in a lot of games. So for people to just act like the Bears are the worst team in the NFL, yes, they might have been that record-wise, but you also have to look at the games that they lost. There were some blowouts. They got blown out by the Cowboys and other teams. But when you really go and look at their schedule and not just laugh and go with what everybody else is going by whenever it comes to talking about the Bears, I think that a lot of people will be surprised by what they put out on the field this year. So really, really excited to see what they do. Bear down, baby. And we're going to shock a lot of people this season. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys for joining me. As always, I'm going to start trying to incorporate more topics into the shows instead of just keeping them to like the NBA Finals recaps. I know that gets a little repetitive for me, and it might get a little repetitive for those of you watching. So let me know how y'all like this new setup, this new format of me talking about multiple things, multiple topics in one video, and we might keep it going. Also, might be talking about a little bit of baseball soon. Been getting into baseball a lot lately. Was slow. It's still a little too slow for my liking, but with the new pitch clock and everything going on, I do think that it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more stuff that's happening. It doesn't feel like you're sitting around all day waiting for something exciting to happen. So might even start incorporating a little bit of baseball into the podcast. But again, that's going to do it for today's show. Again, as always, if you want to connect with me and talk about anything sports, please connect with me on social media. My links are on the screen as well as down in the description box below. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.